Okay, here we go. This is really we're starting Seifel, my favorite book of all of the Navi because it's called Samuel. So I clearly like it. So this is a great place to start. I'll start with a little bit of introductions. I'll give you I use a lot the Maggid studies in Tanakh. These are phenomenal. So we used it was we used one on Shoftim. This is Rav Bazak, Rav Amnon Bazak, who's one of the great teachers in Yeshivat Har Etzion, one of the great Tanakh teachers in the world today. And he has actually a beautiful sefer on Chumash as well, like little nice tidbits on the text. So I'm gonna, before we get to the first chapter, we have to do a little bit of introduction. The first chapter you know already because it's the Haftorah of Rosh Hashanah, the story of Hannah. So that should be kind of like to start off in familiar territory is nice, but I'll share with you Art Scroll's short introduction. Begins with the story of a long of a barren woman. Okay, we know the story of Hannah. Um, she's the mother of Samuel, the greatest of all judges, and a prophet who was the stature of Moshe and Aaron. So we know that because on Friday night davening we say Moshe va'Aaron u'Shmuel b'Kohanav u'Shmuel b'Korei Shemo. So to put Samuel and Moses and Aaron in the same sentence, that's not a small thing, okay? He's the leader during one of the most dismal periods to date, and he raised it back to his earlier eminence. From his home in Ramah, he traveled the length and breadth of the land, teaching, adjudicating, and inspiring. During his tenure, the people insisted they needed a king. Samuel inaugurated the era of Jewish monarchy, anointing both Shaul and David. And although Saul towered head and shoulders above his peers, he failed as a leader. His tragedy cost him the throne, and he was succeeded by David, who became the epitome of royal greatness. So most of the book is the story of David HaMelech, of King David. So the book of Samuel, yeah, it's about King David. A man of faith, unselfish leader, great warrior, loyal friend, compassionate victory, etc., etc., etc. And of course, we know David consolidated the 12 often competing tribes into a single nation, defeated enemies. He becomes regenerative Mashiach, etc., etc., etc. And so he says the book of Samuel marks a historic transition in Jewish history in more ways than one, because the change from judges to kings, that's what we're interested in, is the transition from Shoftim, which we just finished, all the way to Kings, now to Malachim. I mean, by the way, there is a book called Malachim, which really is about Melechs, about kings, but we have to get there first. So this is the bridge. Is also a change in the role of prophets. Since the judges have been chosen by God because of their righteousness, there was no danger that they would define or falsify his message. The monarchy, however, was hereditary. And they say with power comes corruption, and with absolute power comes absolute corruption, things like that. Um, I hope everybody, by the way, I have to just give my PSA. I hope everybody votes this week. If you're in our district, not everybody here is in our district, but if you're in our district, District 11, it's very important to vote. Lots going on. And I know I'm doing well, and I'm upsetting a lot of people with things that I'm saying, so that means I'm doing a good job. The Yeah, you read the chats if you're on there, you could see. Oh my goodness.
It's good to be on social media sometimes.
If I was stumping for somebody else, it would be fine. Anyway, that's good. Anyway, that's good. That's how I know you're doing a good job. So, I have no problem with my convictions. The monarchy, however, was hereditary. Okay, so as we've seen in the sad accounts of the books of Kings and Chronicles, many of the kings sinned grievously and ultimately brought the nation down. The kings could not be moral leaders of the nation as the judges had been. So now that's when we have the rise of the prophets, because the prophets have to counterbalance the corruption or the whatever human nature of the kings. Okay, so that's just this. Now, you can imagine a Bazak's introduction is um, a lot more intense. It's only a couple of pages, but I want to just go over some of the highlights with you. Um, the first question that people have is, why are there two? Why two books of Shmuel? Shmuel Aleph and Shmuel Beis. I promise you that the prophet Samuel, his last name was not Aleph. What do you have? Oh, he brought Malachim. Okay.
Two different stages in Bnei Israel. Like one is going to be the golden age, and then the fall and corruption.
Right. So I mean that they're definitely like why, because like first of all, how did the books of Tanakh get broken up? All this has the question. Okay. Um, they're only so what are, let's just for trivia, this is good. What other two books have Aleph and Beis? Malachim Aleph. Okay. The other one? What's the third one?
דברי הימים.
Correct. Divrei Yamim. See, yeah, Mimi.
You give her.
What's the proper Hebrew term for an expert female? Is it bakia or is it baki also?
בקיא ובקיאה.
Or is bakia? Okay, fine. So יש לנו בקיאה פה.
Yeah, בטח, sure.
Yes, בטח sure, right? Yeah. He says, I bet you say that to all the girls. No. At first glance, the division seems authentic because the second book, which we're not going to get to it, so if I look at the second book, you can see this book has some experience in it. There's some flags here, but the second book begins Shmuel Beis. Like we didn't even start Shmuel off, we're already going to Shmuel Beis. But I promise you, his last name was not Aleph and Beis. It starts by Hi Achrei Mos Shaul v'David Shav Me'akos Amalek. So right after Shaul died. So that seems like a natural. Okay, this is part two. Remember some old movies used to have like a break, an intermission, or a part two, part this. Sometimes because they had to change the reel, or they had an intermission, they had a break, the real break. Like if you think about if you would have gotten the original Godfather movie on video cassette, you couldn't fit it on one tape. It would be two tapes. My wedding video was on two tapes. 30 years ago. It's not that long ago, but 30 years we had, nowadays it's, you have to have like if you don't have, and I'm learning this as we go along, like if you don't have the reveal or the highlight sort of like 2-minute montage of what happened on Instagram within a day, like you're a failure. Oh, we want to do some funny stuff, but I'm afraid to get in trouble. But anyway, so he says that it seems to be a logical division because of after Shaul died, just like Yehoshua started, Vahi Achrei Mos Mos Moshe, after Moshe Rabbeinu died. So that seems to be like a logical break. That's a good place to do it. Okay. This division, however, was unknown to our sages who spoke of the 24 books of the Bible and related to the book of Samuel as they did to the book of Kings and Chronicles as one book. So in other words, when we count 24, we don't count Shmuel Aleph, Shmuel Beis. We don't count Divrei Hayamim Aleph, Divrei Hayamim Beis, Malachim Aleph. It's Samuel, it's Kings, it's Chronicles. So that's a newish thing, dividing it into two. So too the people of the Masorah, they counted the verses in each book, and they noted the number of the verses in these books without any division. So when they talk about how many psukim, so for instance, if you look in the regular stone chumash each and every week, at the end of each parsha, there's a little small print at the end, and it tells you on most parshas tells you how many verses are in the pasuk are in the parsha. So this past week, it was Bishalach. Bishalach was 116 verses. Okay, 116 verses. This week, Yisrael, a little bit shorter. It's, I think, in the 80s, something like that. So we know, and there's also a little code, and they have the commentary of Rabbi David Feinstein explaining what the Masoretic code is. But that's what he means here by the Masoretics, is that people would count verses. And there's also a question of counting the letters in the Torah. The Gemara discusses, the Talmud says how many letters are in the Torah, how many verses, and some, we know we have these, do you count the ones that are read but not written? I mean, that are written but not read. I call it Creek Sieve. What about if it's missing a vav, it has a vav, it doesn't have a vav, like all these things, because it makes a difference when you want to do an exact counting of what everything is. So as far as the counting goes, they never counted as two books. So why in my volume, like this book is called I Samuel, a king in Israel. That should be like on my desk. I Samuel, king of Israel. But it's not I, it's one. But it's one, it's I. Okay. So the division of Samuel into two parts originates in the Septuagint. This is a fascinating historical anecdote here. It was the Greek translation of the Bible from the 2nd century before the Common Era. There, the books of Shmuel and Kings, Samuel and Kings, are combined into a single unit called Sifrei HaMalchiot, called the Book of the Kingdoms, which is divided into 4 parts. Malchiot 1, which is 1 Samuel. Malchiot 2, which is 2 Samuel, Malchiot 3, which is 1 Kings, and Malchiot 4, which is 2 Kings. Okay? In later non-Jewish editions of the Bible, we find the division of the books as accepted today, but the vast majority of Jews were only exposed to it with the printing of the Mikros Gedolos edition of the Tanakh at the beginning of the 16th century. So it's fascinating that for so many years, they just, I don't know, whatever. In any case, it's clear that for all intents and purposes, Samuel 1 and Samuel 2 should be treated as a single unit as it originally was, and this is how we have related to them in this volume. The Interestingly enough, though, in his commentary is only on Samuel 1. I imagine he's working on it. You know, this is they've done most of Tanakh in this set. These are phenomenal, really like great teachers. So the latest one that just came out is on Ezra and Nehemiah, and it was done by Yael Leibowitz. Yael Leibowitz happens to be a friend of mine. She's a phenomenal teacher. She's actually I just worked it out. She asked me beginning of March she's going to come for Shabbos to teach. She's been in Yerushalayim also. She's a great like one of the in my opinion one of the best female Tanakh teachers out there. Like, not even a question. She teaches from Matan, and she's to who? No. Because she married a guy who's also a friend of mine. Like, you know, what's her main name is Klein. Klein from Long Island originally, but she lives in Modi'in, and you know, she's completely normal. And we went to her shiur in this summer when I got to go to the Yemei Yun B'Tanakh in the summertime in the week of Tisha B'Av, so they have a Tanakh conference in Yeshivat Har Etzion. It's run by Herzog College. So they have the best Tanakh teachers in the world, giving 3-4 days straight of different lectures on different topics. You pick what you want. And the fourth day actually is a tour, went on a Tanakh Tiyul. I've always wanted to do it, but it was always the week before Tisha B'Av, and I was always here. So this year, I was in Israel. I wasn't here for Tisha B'Av. I was in Israel for the first time in my life for Tisha B'Av, which was also think about it, somebody of my age never being in Israel for Tisha B'Av. I usually work on Tisha B'Av, so that's why it never happened. But I was able to be there. But to be in this thousands of people that flock on the yeshiva and hear these teachers, okay? So it's the best thing also. So when I have a teacher that, and again, she's a personal friend of my wife and mine. And then like when she starts giving the class, to see us in the audience, it's like, you know, you ever have like you see somebody, you know, you're like, oh man. It's like, but it was an absolutely phenomenal lecture on the story of Yirmiyah and Eicha and whatever. I mean, the classes I heard there were just I've never. My wife was saying she's certainly because in her schooling was never exposed to this type of learning. So like, I cannot believe that this exists and that it's so accessible. It's really for me it was like a bucket list item to be able to do, and it was really special. It was so good. We even schlepped our kids there, and then they were like, you know. To our older kids, and then at a certain point they're like, "Oh, okay, fine." So the main question regarding the essence of this book of Samuel is, why was this book actually needed? What do you mean, why was it needed? How else are you going to have a book named after me? It's between Judges and Kings. So we just finished Judges, and then we are going to go on to Kings, which would seem to be the natural sort of like, we finished a period of Judges. Okay, that doesn't really work anymore. Now we're going to go to monarchy. We're going to have kings, as we discussed in the Art Scroll introduction. So the book of Samuel then could have been split into two parts. One could be the continuation of Judges, dealing with because we still have two judges here. We have Eli and we have Shmuel, as we're going to see. And the second part is the beginning of the Kings, which is Shaul and David. Okay, so why do we need a separate book? So it seems that the book of Samuel is an intermediate unit describing a long and important transitional period between the time of Judges and that of the Kings. The common denominator of the four leaders in the book of Samuel is that they all embody an intermediate level, above a judge, but not yet reaching the level of true royalty. These are the two main differences between judges and kings. Judges are appointed according to the needs of the hour, not consecutively, so that when one judge dies, it doesn't mean that there's automatically someone that takes over. There's no continuity like as it comes with monarchy. There's no father to son judges. It doesn't work like that. Okay? And also, judges usually served as leaders of part of the people of Israel, one or more tribes, and were not generally recognized as leaders of the entire people of Israel. And we had seen that, unfortunately, that was one of the shortcomings of the judges, is that they were sort of like meant for that specific crisis at the moment, let's call it that. And also, they didn't necessarily have consensus of the entirety of the people. So in these two respects, Eli and Shmuel were exceptions. Eli was not only a judge, but he was also the Kohen Gadol. He was the high priest. So he was recognized by the entire nation for that. And his sons presumably continued his leadership, and had they not sinned, we're going to see that story also, of Chafni and Pinchas, they would have continued to lead the people of Israel. So somebody always has to mess it up. And this, when we talk about the prophet Samuel, this is even more true. He's a well-known figure who's revered by the entire nation of Israel, as we will see over the course of the first chapters of the book. He's presented as one of the greatest leaders of the people, paralleling Moshe. So again, that's Moshe and Aaron and Shmuel. His sons were also considered as candidates to continue his role, but here too, they were rejected due to the fact that they didn't follow in their father's ways. And Shmuel HaNavi, sadly, as we'll see, he died very young. Shmuel HaNavi, if I am not mistaken, we'll get to it, is 52 years old. So if you want to know, okay, here's where we're going into Israeli tour guide mode. That if you stand on the exit of Yerushalayim and you look towards Ramot, you know where Ramot is?
Mhm.
Not remote, but remote, which is huge now. There's three remotes, remote Aleph, Bet, Gimel. So let's say if you're looking towards now, if you're going to go towards Highway 443 that way, but if you look down the end of the Begun Highway, going towards out of Yerushalayim, not towards the south, and you see Ramot, but in the background of Ramot, and you can see it from most places in the entrance of Yerushalayim, there's like a little tower over there behind Ramot. It's very visible. And that's called, the Arabs call that, and we call it Nebi Samuel, which means Navi Shmuel. Nebi Samuel, that's the caver of Shmuel Hanavi, the grave of Shmuel Hanavi. Whether he's there or not, I don't know. We'll see. That's always a debate, any grave that you have. But it's very accessible to go visit. It's fascinating in the whole complex there. But to see the grave of Shmuel Hanavi, and we're going to see because he was from a place called Ramah. Ramah is the north of Jerusalem, a height, the north of Jerusalem. Kol B'Ramah Nishma, as we know, we'll see all these things with Rachel Imenu, but Shmuel is from there. We're going to see all these things. So the maps are going to come into play again, as always. But always kind of like if you're going to go up again towards Route 60, towards the north of Yerushalayim, towards Geva Benyamin, which we just left off the story of Pilegesh Begeva, and you could see Nebi Samuel there. Okay, so Shaul was the first king of Israel, but in practice, his kingdom did not endure. It had no continuation. And we'll discuss this also because Shaul, as we did in the end of last week's shiur, Shaul comes from what tribe? He comes from Binyamin, the tribe of Benjamin. The kings were supposed to come from the tribe of Judah. So from the very get-go, we're going to have a lot to talk about when we get to like, oh, we need a king. And it's like, wait a minute, are we supposed to have a king? Or is it like, if you really want, then you could have a king? When the Torah tells Som Tasim Alech HaMelech, you have to place a king. Is that, oh, you must have a king as a Jewish people, you need to have a king? Or is it, well, if you really want, I don't know. Like when your kids ask you something and then you try to give them the answer that they don't want to hear. If you really think it's important, if you really think you need it, then okay.
Need.
Yeah, that's different than, yeah, no, you got to have it. Okay? Rabbi Wein always used to tell us, he says, there's two words you have to get rid of from your vocabulary. Me and I need. So we're so stupid that we didn't understand what greatness we had in front of us all those years. We would say, Rabbi, that's three words. Like, but now I say to my kids and they're like, yeah, I know. Me and I need. Like, you don't need, they say, I need it. I'm like, excuse me? I need new Ugg boots. Excuse me?
Excuse me.
Abba, I would like new Ugg boots. Could I please, like, you know what I mean? That's yeah. And I'm sure our friends who are in Florida right now are seeing the Ugg boots out being paraded in style because, it's really cold. And I hope that you're saving the iguanas from the trees that are falling and putting them in your car and warming them up so that you could, be a real environmental like champion. I really hope so. I would expect no.
I heard about the iguanas.
It's crazy. You've seen it below 40 degrees. They get paralyzed and they just fall out of the trees. And colder than that, they could die. So there are people that actually save the iguanas.
The people get paralyzed too. I saw a mink coat the other day.
Oh my goodness!
A woman wearing a mink coat. She might as well be an iguana. It was ridiculous.
And it was 70.
No,
no, but you got below freezing, didn't you? Did you get to?
Yeah, it was 30 yesterday morning.
Wow. Wow. I mean, I'm concerned about the crops and the futures.
Yes, I'm sure you are.
I'll go all trading places on you, like the whole the Meeks
right,
report, Mr. Meeks with the report. See, steel trap of a mind for nonsense. What I tell you. Okay, so we're going to discuss the failure of Saul's monarchy. Okay. He didn't meet the great challenges that the institution of monarchy in Israel poses, chiefly the challenge of being a leader on the one hand, and also being subjected to God's command on the other, and the prophet. So that's a really hard balance to strike. The role of the king is very, very powerful in the Jewish people. Like they say that somebody who's mored b'malchus, and we're going to see examples of this. If you disagree with the king or disobey the king, you're subject to the death penalty by the hand of the king. Full on, like no problem. No, no, no. There's no. You can protest all you want. The king has well within his rights to execute someone who disagreed with him. That's the role of the king. But the king also had to fear God. We're told in Parsha Shoftim, what's one of the things the king had to always keep with him at all times? He had to have a little Sefer Torah,
ישר.
right? He had to always have a Sefer Torah because you have to understand that balance. And
Yeah.
isn't that not the struggle in every power structure of, you call it checks and balances, you call whatever you want to call it, but you can't let somebody go too far. So the first royal house of the people of Israel was the house of King David. I did not see the was it Netflix or Amazon did like a modern day production of King David, didn't they? Did I? Yeah, I have it. I have it on the to watch list with the 800,000 other things I have to watch, which I never get to. So if anybody has seen that, let me know. I heard about it. I heard it was good. People said to me that it was good. So I don't know. Maybe that we could have that when we finish King David. We'll have a watch session. That's always fun. We'll bring out popcorn. We'll sit and we'll watch. Okay. Um, but it was only realized his house when Shlomo HaMelech ascends to the throne, and for the first time in the history of Israel, a son succeeded his father as king, thus starting the royal dynasty of the house of David. For this reason, it's appropriate for the book of Kings to begin with Solomon, while David, who was not yet part of the royal dynasty, still belongs to the intermediate period, which is in the book of Shmuel. Just parenthetically, also, the next time that you're in Israel, which I hope will be sooner than later for everyone, I know you've been there, but go to Ir David. Go to the city of David, and they have now officially opened to the public, though I've seen it 17 times because they're always like, oh, you're a special group, you could go. But they have opened the pilgrimage road, which goes underneath Ir David.
We just did this.
It is unbelievable, and you could see
From what it was years ago?
Yeah,
much
open-
different.
they-
There is so much more there now, and it's finished, and you could see it going all the way down to the pools. But to see it finished and go with a guide, by the way.
And wear good boots or because it's muddy.
It's muddy. Well, actually, not anymore.
There, but
It's clean now.
before all of it was open, but
Yeah.
we did go into underground and it was.
When you go out of the Ir David, you cross the street, and then you go. Even the stuff that they have in the Ir David proper when you first come in down that road, they've done so much. But you must go with a guide. If you need a guide, I will give you the most excellent guide. She was so good that I set her up on a date. Afterwards, they went out a couple of times. It didn't work out, but they agreed it was a good idea. And I'm like, this girl, how is she not married? She's incredible. She's 27. She's American. She's great Hebrew. She's brilliant, like amazing. And then it turns out we did a little Jewish geography. I'm like, oh yeah, your sister, my daughter's babysat for her nieces and nephews. I'm like, okay, but like you know how that goes. Only an Israel story. But if you want, I'll give you her contact. She's really, really incredible. It is so meaningful. And to be like, you could take out like the ashes of the city that burned that come out of the wall. If you could see it, that this is from the time of the Beis HaMikdash. And then, to me, the most meaningful part of the whole thing, besides going to the pilgrimage road, is when you first go to that first elevated top, where you could see right across from you is the Mount of Olives, Har Hazeisim, and to the left of you is Har Bayit, and the road going up to the old city, and you can see the outer walls of the old city because Ir David is not in the old city; it's outside the old city. And then you open up Tehillim, it's in the 120s, and you say, Yushalayim Harim Savivlah. Like David HaMelech is writing this, and he says, Yushalayim surrounded by mountains. Now, it wouldn't be on the Temple Mount because that's the highest point. And it wouldn't be on Har Hazeisim because it's a cemetery. So, if, like you said, it's probably this point right here, and you look around, and all you see is you're surrounded by mountain. Like when the words of Tanakh come alive in your hands and in front of your eyes, it's incredible. I find that to be the best way to start it. So, but you should go if anybody's going and you look for something to do. I know it's like touristy, but I promise you that there's so much more there now. It's really incredible. So that's he's in the intermediate period. Okay. The biographies of the four leaders in the intermediate period show the complexity of the role of the monarchy in Israel. This then is the central purpose of the book of Shmuel, to offer an account of the period of preparation for the concept of monarchy in Israel. So we have to get ready. You can't just like jump into a king. You have to kind of get ready for it. We will, of course, discuss this matter in detail in the chapters, but this is this. Okay, now, the next question is, whenever we have a book of Tanakh, the number one question people always ask is, who wrote it? Who wrote it? So some of the books we know well, okay. It's named after the prophet Shmuel, even though he passes away in the first part. So the Gemara asks, it's Gemara Bava Basra says, he says Shmuel Hanavi authored this book, right? But it says that he died. So, I mean, this is a question that we have in the Chumash, by the way. If anybody, with Moshe, the last 8 verses in the Torah, who wrote that? So Hashem did. Some say Moshe wrote it. He wrote it B'dema. Some say Yeshua had a hand in it. But the way I like to the Vilna Gaon has an explanation. He says Moshe wrote it B'dema, which usually means b'tears. But he says the word also means that it's mixed up. It's like Hashem gave him the letters; they were all mixed up. He didn't know what it said. But kind of like if anybody likes word puzzles, kind of like that. Anyway, but I'm saying that's a conversation. So Shmuel, so the Gemara says is that it was finished by God. It's called God the Hachozeh, the seer, and Nasan Hanavi, and Nathan the Navi. So God and God, GAD, and Nathan. Because we have it also in it's found in Divrei Hayom as well. It seems, however, that another prophet would have been needed to compile the books of the prophecies of Samuel, Nathan, and God. Right? Vayomer David El Gad, we say in Tachnan, and we have Nasan Hanavi. Of course, we know the story of David and Bathsheba. According to Barbanel, in his introduction, there was a prophet, another one had to be involved here. That's Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, who edited the books of Shmuel and Malachim, of Samuel and Kings, and among other things, added comments that appear to have been written at a later date, such as "to this day." So this is his quote. This is from the Abarbanel. As I see it, Shmuel wrote the things that happened in his time, and Nathan the prophet also wrote by himself, and God the seer also wrote by himself, each one writing all what happened in his time, which would make sense. Like you're going to write what happened as contemporarily. The prophet Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, he collected these writings and joined them together and arranged the entire book based on them. For if not so, who collected these works that were written by different authors? For the text doesn't say that these prophets wrote their words one after the other, but rather that each of them wrote a separate book. It seems that when Yirmiyahu wanted to write the book of Kings, he brought the book of Samuel that is next to it, and he collected the words of the prophets mentioned in the book, and without a doubt added things to clarify the words as he saw fit. This is what it stated. It says, to this day. And this is what it means formerly in Israel. Like all these little kind of parenthetical phrases that you realize that that's the author kind of just putting it together. Finally, his last comment, he writes, formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he spoke thus, come and let us go to the seer, let us go to the prophet. For he that is now called a prophet was formerly called a seer. It comes to explain that what says really afterwards, when they said, oh, is the seer here? In order to facilitate our understanding of the meaning of the question, the verse clarifies that he who we now call a prophet was called in the past, Lifanim was called a seer, as we'll see a pasuk. This verse appears to be in a later edition. Rabbi Yosef Kara, a disciple of Rashi, he raised a radical possibility in commentary to this verse, and he says, and we'll just finish with this, he whom this generation calls a prophet was called in earlier generations a seer chozeh, usually. Lachazot. Right. You learn from this that when this book was written, they had already called a seer a prophet, implying that this book was not written in the days of Shmuel. A rabbi's of blessed memory said that Shmuel wrote this book, and he who illuminates the earth will make darkness light and rugged places plain. I love how they write. It seems, however, there is no need to adopt such an extreme position and argue that the book was written in a much later period, because there's always this question about who wrote what. Was it written then?
Yeah, they're in relationship to that.
Yirmiyahu is like caused the destruction of the first base of Mikdash. So you have to say it was many years later? It suffices to say that the book includes notes that were added at a later stage, but the book itself was indeed written close to the event themselves. So we have to kind of tidy it up and fix it up to make it readable, because, much like if you were writing a book of history and then you had to kind of make it contemporary for the contemporary reader to understand. It's interesting that if you would take, let's say, if you would read books on modern Israeli history, something that was written 20 years ago would almost be like non-applicable. You're like, what do you do? The only thing that would be consistent is that Bibi was still in office, right? But when they say, oh yes, like the Oslo Accords, it's the beginning of what a new, it's going to be the best thing ever. I don't know, or before disengagement, or 5 wars have happened since then, all these things, and the leadership and just listing the parties. Oh, and the strength of the Labor Party. The Labor Party is virtually non-existent today. And who knows? But we're having elections, by the way. There's going to be elections by October, most likely to be in the spring. Hoo-ah, right? We'll see. If we thought that we're out of the woods, we're just getting warmed up. All right, so let's try to crack it a little bit. Yeah, yeah. Let me give you a little bit of text. I can put that little Yeshua Shoftim away. And Shmuel. And this should be very, very familiar to you. Because it says right away, Haftorah, first day Rosh Hashanah. Okay? It's Tu B'Shvat yesterday, which means we are less than 2 months away from Pesach. Just saying it, okay? Which means we are less than a month away from Purim. Just saying it. And that means, Rosh Hashanah is coming. We have to start repenting, right? We got to get to work. Okay. We'll just we'll do a few psukim as we get through. Vayhi ish echad min haramasayim tzofim mehar Ephraim, ushmo Elkanah ben Yerocham ben Elihu ben Tohu ben Tzuf Ephrasi. There was a certain man from Ramatayim Tzofim, okay, from the Har Ephraim. Har Ephraim is, again, and we look at the maps a little bit north of Jerusalem. So he gets like a long list of names here. Elkanah, Yerucham. It's not Yerucham, by the way, it's Yerocham. Elihu, Tohu, Tzuf, from the land of Ephraim. Okay. Elkanah, we're told, was a Levi. He was a descendant, actually, he was a descendant of Korach. Because we're told, by the way, it says B'nai Korach lo mesu, that despite the whole terrible situation of Korach, that his sons did tshuva at the last second. And we'll see about his whole wife situation. Why is it called Ramatzayim Tzofim? The place is named for its topographical characteristics because it means two heights looking at one another. When you say Ramah or Ramatayim, it means that there's two of them, like Givatayim, something like that. There's two valleys, two hills, two mountains. So he lived on one of the two hills that were separated by a valley, and you could see one. So and Sofim is Ramatayim Sofim, so you could say like to look, but this is a place where there were prophets or people that were seers, people that had sofed, people who had sofek kol hanistarot, someone who could see everything that was hidden. Okay, and here we have kind of a continuation that the last story we had was a Levi who found himself in the area of Ephraim. Here also he's a Levi, but he doesn't live the Levites don't really have a place to go, but he settled in Ephraim. Okay. V'lo shtei nashim shem achas chana v'shem hashenes penina v'hi l'pnina yiladim v'chana ein yiladim. So this is like, let's go right back to Bereshis. Okay, and he had wives. One had a lot of kids, one had no kids. Let's go back to the story of the barren woman. So there's Chana and there's Penina. Ve'allah ha'ish hahu me'iro miyamim yamima l'ishtachavos l'zborach l'Hashem tzvakos b'shilo v'sham shnei b'nei Eli chofni u'pinchas kohanim l'Hashem. So as it were, this was, kind of customary. People would go up for a pilgrimage to the holy place. So the holy place was in Shiloh. Again, we're going to discuss a lot of Shiloh. The Mishkan resided in Shiloh for 369 years in Shiloh. That's another thing. After you go to Ir David, take a little bit north and go to the site of Shiloh. We have to take a class trip already. This is ridiculous. I don't know. The problem is it would be too enjoyable and nobody would ever want to come back. But that would be, I'm very good on a bus microphone, let me tell you.
It's your medium.
Yeah, it's like right in my wheelhouse, and I do just the right amount of Israeli and the right amount of, yeah. Yeah. Look, if Billie Eilish could be an expert on, territorial law, then I could certainly be an Israeli tour guide. I think. I might even be more.
I don't think that's a fair comparison.
Yeah, I'm a lot more qualified. Yeah, I just want to make fun of her because she's an idiot. There's no limit to stupidity, by the way. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so he would go year to year. He would go, but again, when you go to Shiloh, you have the pilgrimage. You would go and you would bring karbanos and you would daven. So there you have Eli. Eli is the Kohen Gadol at the time, and he has his two sons Chafni and Pinchas. Okay, and they're the Kohanim serving. So on that day, he brings offerings. He gave portions to Penina, to his wife, to her sons, and to her daughters. Ulechana yitain mana achas apayim, ki es Chana ahev Hashem sagar rachma. But to Chana he gave a double portion because he loves Chana. But Hashem had kept her barren. Now, you already see where this is going. Haven't we seen this movie before? The favoritism, the rejected one, the one who gives everything. So Chana is Rachel, Penina is Leah. Leah has a kid every other day. She feels unloved by her husband. I mean, we've seen this before, but if you don't have to go too far, but if you go on Parshas Toldos, and I'm sorry, in Parshas Vayetze, and the births of the tribes, and the first three kids, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, are named by Leah. Yaakov's not even involved. Vatikra Shemo, and she says, and she's like, maybe this time my husband will pay attention to me. Maybe now he'll like me. Maybe now he'll notice me. So that's not good. But it's also like, first, maybe this is why we shouldn't have two wives. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. Maybe this is good advice that both in Bereshis and here in Shmuel Aleph. Maybe not the best idea. I don't know. Maybe it creates some issues, some jealousy, possibly. I don't know. Could be. I mean, I don't remember clearly. I did see a few episodes. Remember that show, Big Love?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, about the Mormons. So
Yes.
I remember there being some tension. Maybe that wasn't the smartest idea. I mean, what do I know? I don't know more than Billie Eilish, so what do I know about anything? But maybe not the best idea. You can imagine that if you had to share your spouse with someone else, I don't know. But when one has everything and one has nothing, but he clearly loves one because it says, Ahev. It says that Rachel was considered the loved one and Leah was referred to as Sinuah. So in Art Scroll, because, it's Art Scroll, they wrote she was less loved. That's not what Sinuah means. Sinuah means hated, despised. Now, I know the Mefarshim, they have a lot of conversations. It's not nice. You don't write somebody was despised. It's not nice. But that's the reality. And certainly from perception point of view, that's how a person felt. But here it says, Chana Ahev, he loves her. Now, I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong yet. We don't know that. But sometimes maybe he's overcompensating. He loves her or he's giving her more. He's giving her a nicer gift because after all, but you're going to see that, in a typical man fashion, he's completely paralyzed like a sub 40-degree iguana. And he doesn't know what to say, like when there's trouble. And that's how we get, by the way, when the women in our lives are suffering, it hurts us. It really does. We just don't know what to say because we're trying to think it up like 3 steps ahead. And if I say this, I'm gonna get ill for that. If I say this, he's gonna cry about that. If I do that, and so we just take the path of least resistance and we shut down like an iguana under 40 degrees. We fall out of the tree and we're paralyzed. I'm explaining on behalf of my people, the men in the world, hopefully some of the evolved ones that we also have a tendency to want to fix things. So, if our wife comes home and complains about a coworker, so our first thing is instead of saying, I'm sorry that happened to you. That must be very painful for you. That must be so distressing to you, which is probably what she wants to hear, as opposed to like, well, why don't you do this? And why do you do that? Why do you, I'm like, that is not helpful. It's helpful for me, but not helpful for her. I'm still learning. 30 years, I'm still learning this. Trust me. Okay. But you're going to see this marriage dynamic, which plays out in the text. Okay. V'hi asatot tzarasa gam kasba avur hara'ima ki sagar Hashem ba'arachma. Okay. Her rival. Now she doesn't even get a name anymore. She in one verse she loses her name. The tzara, the Gemara in Yevamos uses it on and again, is the other one, but it's from the word like to grish someone, right? I don't know how to say it in English, but like it's the thorn in the side, the tzara, the pain in the tuchus, right? That's what she becomes. Penina is her rival, provokes her again and again and again in order to irritate her because Hashem had closed her womb. So everybody's acting out. She's upset because she doesn't have a kid. She's upset because she has all the kids, but her husband loves the other one more. The husband doesn't know what to do, right? Because he's just a man, okay? Every single year, Nebuch, this Penina, she would go after her. She would torture her. Now, you don't hit somebody when they're down. I mean, you shouldn't hit them anytime. But to torture someone who's really suffering, it's hard. So whenever Penina would go up to the house of Hashem, she would provoke her. Chana would cry and she wouldn't eat. And then here's I'm going to just end it after this pasuk and have a conversation here. And this just shows this is the helplessness of the man, and perhaps I wouldn't say ignorance, but cluelessness. We're not ignorant, we are clueless. Again, speaking on behalf of my, whatever, are we a race? On behalf of the males in the world, we're clueless. Chatasi, avisi, pashati, I admit. Okay. So Vayomer Elkanah Ishas, or Elkanah would his wife, her husband says to her, Chana lama tifki, what are you crying for? Okay. That's red flag number one. Don't say why, what are you crying for? V'lama lo sachia, why are you not eating? Why aren't you eating? Okay, that's red flag number two. Don't ask a woman about her emotional state, and don't ask her about her appetite or what she is or isn't eating. Don't ever do that. Like, why are you so heartbroken? And here it comes. Here it comes. This is the whopper of all lines, one of the greatest lines in all of Tanakh. Hello, anochi tov loch mi'asara banim. Who needs kids? You got me.
Do not say that.
Aren't I better to you than 10 children? She has 10 kids, yeah, but I love you. What? So this should be like the a marriage therapist's like on the desk right there. Like here's a whole list of things what not to say. Okay, there are these series of books. If you go to any Frummy bookstore, they have these like people write English books, like the 10 successful tips for a happy marriage, or this and that. You know, I'll give you one successful tip. Read this pasuk together, and here, don't ever say this to me. Don't ever tell it. If your wife asks you how she looks, amazing, incredible. I told you this. I once said I answered fine. How do I look? Fine.
Nope.
Right? And I'm like I'm giving as many tips as I can to my future son-in-law. Like the girl he's married, like I've known her whole life. I like when she says this, she means this is what you do, right? Don't run and hide. But yeah. So, but what the text has set up for us in a very, very short manner of time is that we have a big problem with this family dynamic. You have a guy, he's clueless. You have a girl, she's clueless and she's mean. You have another one who's suffering, and she is now taken this suffering, her emotional suffering has now affected her physical existence. She doesn't eat. I say this because one of the things, it's actually something I'm very proud of. One of the things that Sigzun Sulam Lang Yor is working with. So if you know our chazan on Rosh Hashanah Kippur, Rabbi Block, so he and his wife, so they started this organization Yesh Tikva. I know Gail Toll is actually very, very involved in it, but to bring awareness about infertility. And we never mean to hurt somebody who has an issue having children. God forbid. But we don't realize that we often inadvertently hurt people. And that shul life in particular, can be the most uncomfortable place for a young family that's struggling to have children. Okay? So it's very simple as when somebody who's struggling to have children, they want to go to shul and they walk in, the first thing they do is they stumble over all the baby carriages. That's a trigger. Now, I'm not saying we can't have people bring the baby carriages to school. I'm just saying, but just be sensitive about it. And what's every announcement in shul? Mazel tov on the bris, mazel tov on the shalom zachar, mazel tov on the biz. No. It's a big trigger, such to a point that it may affect their physical well-being, and they'll say, I don't want to go to shul, or I don't want to eat, or I don't want to do this. Which is why that Yesh Tikva Shabbos awareness we always do is around Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because that's the month of the family holiday. And there are many people who, while struggling, they don't want to go to a Pesach Seder. You want me to sit at a thing where it's everybody with their kids and their family, and the whole thing is geared, teach your children, and and ask the children the questions, and give them the prize. That's got to be the most painful, uncomfortable thing ever. And then we say, right before Kol HaNa'arim, we have all the kids under the talis, okay? And I do it here, and somebody gave me a little flack for it the first year, and then I said, I don't care. Okay, then nobody ever gave me flack again. But I have a woman gets up and reads a prayer, a woman who herself shared her story here and struggled to have children now, has two beautiful children, amazing. But she reads the prayer for infertility, wishing right before we do Kol HaNa'arim, while the kids are standing under the talis. And then this year to have the Aliyah given to someone who finally had a child after a very, very long, difficult struggle, also which was well documented within, within our circles. And we find that extremely meaningful. And then our shuls have to be a place of support, so where we can. But a lot of it I get from the Parashas and Bereshis and from here. And just simply though, like what to say, what to do, and more importantly, what not to say and what not to do. An innocuous Shabbos meal where you have a young couple over. So you guys trying to have children? You think of having children? So what if they're struggling? What have you just done? What has just happened? And on and on and on and on and on. So I think that we've done a really good job. And again, that's really thanks to Gila and David. Come to the wedding, by the way. It's exciting. But to bring awareness and sensitivity and help, that's something. But this is a major, major starting point for that. And we're going to see what happens with this. But this is the story of Chana. And Chana, of course, becomes Shmuel. And then I'll tell you this something I'll call, if you anybody here believe in Freudian psychology? Anybody big proponents of it? Okay, so sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. My Hebrew name is Yitzchak Shmuel. My wife's Hebrew name is Chana Sarah. Thank you. Right? Yitzchak's mother, Sarah. Chana's, Shmuel's mother was Chana. So I'm, whatever you want to make of that.
A lot of those.
A lot of those, yeah. Yeah, so that my, the woman I married who's my partner in life and the best thing ever happened to me in the world is my mother figure. I don't know. I'm just saying, does it talk about how I feel about my mother? I don't know. We'll see. But yeah. So all right. So we are off and running. The book of Samuel 1. So if you have a Tanakh, it's found in there, of course. If you get a separate volume, most of the time Samuel 1 and 2 are together. So if you have that, we'll continue this going forward. And everybody just stay warm. And please don't forget to vote this week. If you didn't vote, special primary election, District 11, please make sure you do your civic responsibility. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes,
Thank
I can't wait.